And welcome back to the Old Gabbox podcast and radio show. Glad you're with us again today as we have some thoughts about the college football season up to this point, all brought to you by Casa de Campo, our friends in the Dominican Republic. It's the best golf in the Caribbean. They're cutting the ribbon on Teeth of the Dog. It's been undergoing a facelift thanks to Jerry Pate. That's one of Pete Dye's absolute gems down at Casa de Campo. It opens in December. I'll be down. Check out Casa de Campo. All right, before we get started, and some thoughts about Mark Womack, a longtime friend who passed away today at the age of 70. He was the Southeastern Conference Executive Commissioner, had worked with the conference for close to 50 years, was involved in all avenues of the growth of the Southeastern Conference. Twice was acting commissioner as they were deciding who was going to be the next commissioner. And he worked with Harvey Schiller and Roy Kramer and Mike Slive, obviously Greg Sankey. Mark Womack was an honorable Southern gentleman, the best of the best. And I was so fortunate to have rubbed elbows and called him a friend. When I graduated from the University of Florida many years ago, he was in the SEC office, and Mark Womack was a man you could always count on. And he was a great family man. And I'm very sad tonight to report the passing of the great Mark Womack of the Southeastern Conference. With that said, let's talk about what we've seen so far this season in college football. Somebody asked me the other day what is going on when a Penn State, highly ranked, goes to UCLA. The Bruins they'd fired their head coach 2 weeks prior, and they go out there and lose to a UCLA team that virtually seemed like it was a roster in shambles. And I think what we're seeing, and it started at the beginning of the year, and now halfway through, we're seeing more and more, the word parody is setting in college football. Now, that's something that the heavyweights, the big dogs, don't want to hear. Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama, Georgia, they don't want to hear the word parody. They don't want things to even out, but they are evening out. The talent pool in college football we've seen over the last 3 years has been diluted. And teams or programs, Indiana is a perfect example. You get a new coach in Curt Cignetti. He understands the process, the transfer portal, NIL. Texas Tech, the last few years, in recent memory, hasn't been a serious player as far as championships in the Big 12 or nationally, and yet they have an NIL booster who wants a national championship. And they spend as much money as Ohio State, and the talent that they got in is really good, especially on the defensive front and offensively. So we're seeing a changing of the guard. As Lane Kiffin said recently, the Ole Miss head coach, the dynasties are dead in the Southeastern Conference. No longer will Georgia and Alabama be the dominant program year in and year out. They'll still be good. Obviously, proud tradition means something. But the fact that their players are coming and going, and players who normally would have been backups are now starters at other programs, it's a changing of the guard. And with parity setting in, what we're going to see as the playoffs expand in years to come, right now 12, ultimately it'll be 16, and arguably probably will go to 24 in the next 3 to 5 years. What we're seeing are teams that will be making the playoffs with 3 losses, maybe even 4 losses down the road. Does this sound familiar? It's the model of the National Football League. That's why the NFL is so popular, because each and every year, virtually every franchise has an opportunity to make the playoffs. That's what we're seeing in college football. And if you haven't read the story, I urge you to check it out. In the next 2 years, the Big Ten will be the first power conference to potentially sell their rights to corporate America. In the story that I read, this corporation would invest $2 billion into the Big Ten, with each school getting the same amount of money, 16 schools now, potentially 18. And let's see where it goes. So that means Northwestern and Rutgers and Maryland and Iowa, all of these programs will get the same money as Ohio State and Michigan. Ohio State and Michigan they're balking at this plan, by the way, but that's where we're headed. And this would be on top of what each school is already getting now from the NCAA settlement. So things are evening out across the board. Obviously, tradition is still a powerful element in college football. If you hire the right coaches, recruiting is still an element, not as important as it used to be. But in the case of Georgia and Alabama and Ohio State, still getting verbal commitments from the top high school football players in the country. But I think what we're seeing now is, and it's on display each and every week. It's not just Penn State losing at UCLA. It's Ole Miss suddenly 5-0 and potentially could be headed for one of those special seasons into the playoffs. Those are just some of the examples. And the question is, who's going to win the Southeastern Conference? Well, gosh, Vanderbilt still has an opportunity. Certainly Missouri has an opportunity. Mississippi State went from doormats a year ago, then suddenly they're exciting again. Not that they're going to win the conference, but they will be a factor as they play some key games down the road. So get used to it, college football fans. The word parity, which the big dogs don't want to hear, is setting in college football. And in my opinion, parity makes every game every week that much more exciting. And when you look at these schedules, it's not just Florida playing a brutal schedule week in and week out. Alabama has a brutal schedule. Auburn has a brutal schedule. Texas has a brutal schedule. That's what parity does. Each and every week, there are no longer any pushovers, no gimmies, if you will. And I think that adds a spice of excitement and unpredictability to the game of college football. We're seeing it on display in 2025. It'll be on display the rest of this season. And then look out next year and years beyond. We're going to have some schools that ordinarily wouldn't have been powerhouses. They will become powerhouses if they figure out how to deal the NIL money that ultimately everybody will be getting the same, just like they do in the National Football League. And another thought as we move forward, and this was at the end of the Vanderbilt-Alabama game, fan behavior is now at an all-time low. As Diego Pavia, the Vanderbilt quarterback, was leaving the field after his team fought their hearts out and lost 30-14 in Tuscaloosa, there was a fan in the end zone. This was shot by a member of the Vanderbilt group as they were leaving the field. An Alabama fan with his Alabama football shirt, cocktail in hand, took it upon himself to work his way down to the end zone where he would be yelling profanities at Diego Pavia. Now, Pavia, being an emotional young man, listen, cocky, yes, exciting. He was yelling back. He was giving it as good as he was getting it. But my thought was, why is the fan yelling at a college kid? What prompted this man to wait until the end to go down and yell at a college kid? It makes no sense to me. And I think what we're seeing is alcohol is playing a prominent role. College stadiums have now felt an income platform being selling beer and alcohol at games. You have intoxicated fans paying more money for tickets than ever before, and they feel that they're entitled somewhat. And I don't believe security at college sporting events, in particular football games where you have 90 to 100,000 people jammed into a stadium, I just don't think security is good enough. People will argue with me on that. And people from athletic departments will tell me, hey, we're doing more now than we've ever done. Times 10, in some cases, times 20 what it used to be. Well, I just don't think it's good enough. And in some cases, stadiums like at Bryant-Denny Stadium, the fans who buy the upper deck seats don't want to sit there. It's too high up. So they come down on the sidelines, and at Bryant-Denny on both sidelines behind the wire fence before you get into the seats, there's about 15 to 20 yards. It's just thousands of fans packed in like a cattle call. And I just don't think anything good can become of that. Every week we're seeing on video fans getting into incredible fights where some people getting actually knocked unconscious. It's on video. We see everything on video now. Security is nowhere to be found. Now, we see this in the National Football League, but not as much. NFL stadiums aren't as big as college football stadiums. They have more corporate boxes than college football stadiums, so you don't have as many fans. And again, security is ramped up at National Football League stadiums. And sometimes it gets a little carried away. outside NFL stadiums after games, etc. But I think for the most part, we're seeing an increase in poor fan behavior at college football games. Something has to be done before something terrible happens. The field storming, Southeastern Conference has taken steps, massive fines for schools who allow field storming. That is a really, really good thing. If you saw the Virginia field storming against Florida State a couple of weeks ago, Virginia hasn't had many wins over the years. So can we excuse that? For the most part, that was somewhat tame. But again, when fans storm the field, players, coaches are in danger of getting injured. You just can't have it happen. You know, it all rolls back a few weeks ago, the Ryder Cup, Bethpage Black, New York City. Fan behavior was outlandish. It was horrible. I expected New York fans to be raucous and rowdy. They were, but there's always that element that's intoxicated, that feels entitled, and they feel they can yell whatever they want, as vile and as obnoxious as it is, at anybody they want. And in golf, you're close to the action, closer than you are maybe at a football game. That cannot be tolerated. The PGA of America needed to do a better job controlling fan behavior. We're talking college football. It's out of hand. I don't want this to get any worse. So colleges and universities need to take better steps, and they are, but they need to do even more to keep fan behavior down to a minimum. I tell you, that fan in the end zone yelling at Diego Pavia, it struck a nerve. And I still don't understand why a grown man in his 50s and 60s feels compelled to wait until the end of the game to yell at the star quarterback for Vanderbilt just to prove, hey, we beat you. You had nothing to do with it. My thoughts so far, halfway through the college football season. Take care, everybody, and thanks for watching the Old Gap Box podcast and radio show.